In the name of the Lord, the most gracious, ever merciful. On behalf of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, I'd like to extend the Islamic greeting of Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May the peace, mercy and blessings of God be upon you all. My name is Sheinkopf and I'll be moderating the event this evening. It's a great honor and privilege to see such different, diverse members of the studio audience from different faith traditions, from different backgrounds. You may have a faith or you may not have a faith, but you're all most welcome here to share in this interfaith iftar dinner. Of course, the iftar dinner will come later. You can appreciate more than I can that I can't wait for those delectables when we break fast. But up until then, you're going to have to bear with us, and we'll have some dialogue first before we enjoy the food of the evening, of the iftar. As you know, this is the holy month of Ramadan, in which Muslims across the world who are able to fast from sunrise to sunset. Fasting is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and it's observed during the month of Ramadan, and Ramadan is the 9th month in the Islamic calendar. For Muslims, it's a time of self-reflection, worship, almsgiving, being charitable, helping your fellow human being, forgiving and seeking forgiveness from the Lord, and of course, spiritual fellowship. But fasting is not just unique to Islam. In fact, its roots are also found in other prophetic traditions like Judaism and Christianity. And in fact, in other ancient traditions like Hinduism, in Jainism, in Buddhism, and even Taoism. Today we will hear speakers from the Jewish, Christian, and Islamic faith traditions. And they'll give their perspectives on the topic of fasting, shared traditions of sacrifice and worship. I would like to take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to the speakers. And as I mention the speaker's name, I would like them to now take their place at the table here to my left. Rabbi Laura Sheinkopf, Congregation Jewish Community North, Deacon Robert Hesse, Galveston, Houston Archdiocese, and our very own Dr. Rana from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Thank you for accepting this invitation to speak today, and we look forward to hearing from you. But first, as is our tradition, we will start this evening's event in remembrance of God with a reading from the Holy Quran in Arabic, followed by its translation. And I will ask Mr. Sajil Malik to come up now to recite. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu kutiba عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Translation. O ye who believe, fasting is prescribed for you, as it was prescribed for those before you, so that you may guard against evil. Spanish translation. Oh creyentes, se os prescribe el ayuno, como fue prescrito a los que os precedieron, para que seáis justos. Thank you.
I would like to now call upon Dr. Ahmad, the Vice President of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community North Chapter, to give a formal welcome to the community. Thank you.
Peace be on you. And that's a little southern slang there. I'm going to give you a little overview on our community. And after that, then we will go through everything else. For those of y'all who have been here before, I'm sorry it might be a little repetitious, but I think we have a lot of new faces this time, so it'll benefit everybody. So who are we? The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is a dynamic, fast-growing international revival movement within Islam. It was founded in 1889. It spans over 200 countries with membership exceeding tens of millions. Its current headquarters is in the UK. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is the only Islamic organization to believe that the long-awaited Messiah has come in the person of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian. Ahmad claimed to be the metaphorical second coming of Jesus of Nazareth and the divine guide whose advent was foretold by the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, peace be upon him. And the Muslim community believed that God sent Ahmad, like Jesus, to end religious wars, condemn bloodshed, and reinstitute morality, justice, and peace. Ahmad's advent has brought an unprecedented era of Islamic revival. He divested Islam of fanatical beliefs and practices by vigorously championing Islam's true and essential teachings. He also recognized the noble teachings of the great religious founders and saints, including Zoroaster, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, Confucius, Lao Tzu, and Guru Nanak, peace be on all of them, and explained how such teachings converged into the one true Islam. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is the leading Islamic organization to categorically reject terrorism in any form. Over a century ago, Ahmad emphatically declared that an aggressive jihad by the sword has no place in Islam. In its place, he taught his followers to wage a bloodless, intellectual jihad of the pen to defend Islam. To this end, Ahmad penned over 80 books and tens of thousands of letters, delivered hundreds of lectures, and engaged in scores of public debates. His rigorous and rational defenses of Islam unsettled conventional Muslim thinking. As part of its effort to revive Islam, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community continued to spread Ahmad's teaching of moderation and restraint in the face of bitter opposition from parts of the Muslim world. Similarly, it is the only Islamic organization to endorse the separation of mosque and state. Over a century ago, Ahmad taught his followers to protect the sanctity of both religion and government by becoming righteous souls as well as loyal citizens. He cautioned against irrational interpretation of Quranic pronouncements and misapplications of Islamic law. He continually voiced his concerns over protecting the rights of God's creatures. Today, the community continues to be an advocate for universal human rights and protections for religious and other minorities. It champions the empowerment and education of women. Its members are among the most law-abiding, educated, and engaged Muslims in the world. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is the foremost Islamic organization with a central spiritual leader. Over a century ago, Ahmad reminded his followers of God's promise to safeguard the message of Islam through Khilafah, the spiritual institution of successorship to prophethood. It believes that the only spiritual successorship can uphold the true values of Islam and unite humanity. 5 spiritual leaders have succeeded Ahmad since his demise in 1908. Its 5th and current spiritual head, Mirza Masroor Ahmad, resides in the UK Under the leadership of its spiritual successors, the community has now built over 15,000 mosques, over 500 schools, and 30 hospitals. It has translated the Holy Quran into over 70 languages. It propagates the true teachings of Islam and the message of peace and tolerance through a 24-hour satellite channel and internet and print as well. It has been at the forefront of worldwide disaster relief through an independent charitable organization called Humanity First. We started these interfaith events in 1896, during the time of Ahmed, and we have been doing this ever since then. We are the oldest Muslim group in America. We started in the 1920s here. We have the longest running Muslim journal in publication called the Muslim Sunrise, which is now going on 90 years. We have started campaigns, Muslims for Peace, Muslims for Life, and Muslims for Loyalty. With this, I'll turn it back over to the moderator.
By the way, we have some free copies of the Quran near the exit. So if anyone wants to take a copy, you may do so. Before introducing the speakers, it is important to understand that the purpose of this interfaith event is not to engage in debate, but rather to gain a better understanding of our faith. So it's all about dialogue. As I mentioned in my introduction, fasting is a shared tradition, both observed in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in some form or fashion. And of course, these faiths are collectively known as the Abrahamic faiths. So there may well be some interesting parallels that that can be drawn from this topic, right? Or we may find some differences, some subtle differences or major differences, in the concepts and application. Of course, we will listen and learn, right? You of course, will have an opportunity to ask questions during the Q&A segment, which will, follow, straight after the speeches. And so you'll have a chance to make a statement or to ask questions of our panel. And I want to say also that each speaker has been allocated 7 minutes, and I'm going to religiously keep you to that time, okay? I might have to do a rugby tackle if that's what takes. So the first speaker to address the topic will be Rabbi Sheinkopf, representing Judaism, and before she gets up, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Rabbi Sheinkopf is a writer, teacher, and a rabbinic associate at Congregation Jewish Community North. She graduated with honors from Columbia University in comparative religion. She received a Master of Hebrew Letters from Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, Ohio, where she was also ordained in 2002. As a Wexner Graduate Fellow, she received awards in Holocaust Studies and American Jewish History. Since graduating, Rabbi Sheinkopf has worked on a range of domestic policy issues in Washington, D.C., in which she helped create a coalition. One of those things that she did was she created a coalition of prominent religious leaders to support various First Amendment challenges. Rabbi Sheinkopf regularly contributes to Interfaith Houston blog and is a popular local speaker with emphasis in educating medical and mental health professionals on religion and psychology. She is a member of various organizations. I've only listed 2 here, including the Central Conference of American Rabbis and the Coalition for Mutual Respect. Her work has appeared in several journals, including the Jewish Herald Voice and the American Jewish Archive Journal. She has a forthcoming book of essays entitled Kaddish. She lives in Houston with her son and daughter. Rabbi, please.
First of all, this is, I think, the 3rd or 4th time I've been here, and every time I've felt incredibly welcome. And it's an immense thing to be incredibly welcome as a Jewish person, as a rabbi, as a woman in this mosque, and I wanted to recognize that, really, because it's tremendous. And after I heard a little bit about your history, I was even more impressed. But just a little funny thing is that I'm not from Pakistan or someplace far away, but I am from a foreign country, which is called Massachusetts. And my first pulpit in Harlingen, Texas, where they inflicted a student upon people who had not enough people for a real rabbi, I was going down for the high holidays. And the biggest time when Jews fast is Yom Kippur, which is our Day of Atonement. And everything that Muslims fast in order to achieve is exactly the same. You could probably read the list. It's probably the same. But we do it for one day. Only one day. And then there are other times during the year that more observant Jews might fast, like Tisha B'Av, which is the 9th of Av. That's the day in the month when the temple was destroyed. And so that's a fast day. And there are many others as well. But most Jews, mainstream Jews, only know about and observe Yom Kippur. And most major holidays are celebrated 2 days because the rabbis wanted to make sure that we got it right. In case we messed up the calendar, we want to make sure we got it right, whatever. So the only day that that does not happen is Yom Kippur, because we should not fast for more than a day. And I don't want to be competitive, but see, this is where Jews become a little bit ridiculous about the fasting. So when I was going down to Harlingen, I called and I said, do you guys do 2 days of Rosh Hashanah? He said, Rabbi, I'll get back to you. He calls me back up and he says, Rabbi, 2 days Rosh Hashanah, 2 days Yom Kippur. I said, no, you're not going to be singing me the second day of Yom Kippur. We don't do the second day. They had no idea. But as it turns out, I think fasting is a great analogy for the learning that needs to happen in order for a ritual to have meaning. So we take something that's entirely physical, and somehow that entirely physical need leads to a spiritual gift, really. So sacrifice in Hebrew means is korban, which means to draw closer to God. So in not eating, we want to draw closer to God. But human beings stand in between heaven and earth. And for most of the time in Jewish tradition, we recognize the connection to God through our connection to the earth, food, bounty. But when it comes to fasting, fasting produces other mechanisms, other pathways to connect to whatever this divine is. And those are our hunger leads us to a place of profound humility, vulnerability, community, and gratitude. So in depriving ourselves of food, we recognize how mortal we are, how fragile we are, how utterly incomprehensible it is to know God, because we need everything that this God provides us with. When that's taken away, we feel that yearning and that hunger for God rather than a hunger for other accomplishments. So we use that for our spiritual well-being, and we use it around repentance specifically because repentance requires absolute humility and honesty with oneself. And we start with ourselves, inside of ourselves, literally inside this body that could not even operate unless we had the gifts from the earth. Being a woman has taught me a lot about vulnerability and humility. And I've used that to gain a certain amount of spiritual strength. You can never know how fragile a new life is until you're involved in bringing it into the world. And that physical act is also a spiritual awakening. So this is a similar kind of thing. We recognize our needs. We recognize that there but for the grace of God go we. And finally, I was standing back there reading those panels, and of course, Judaism and Islam share many, many texts, one of them being Deuteronomy. And my favorite passage in Deuteronomy really, I think, illustrates everything, and it's partly quoted back there. But it's Moses' big swan song. It's actually the reprise of his swan song, so it's even better written. And as a speechwriter myself, I can tell you right now that it's better to read it at the end than in Exodus. It's a much better speech. But he says, now I'm going to give you these things that you need to do, these sacrifices, right? This life full of rules and obligations. I'm going to give this to you because it is going to connect you to something eternal. And Moses says, and this eternal is not too high for you, that you should have to reach up into heaven and bring it down to earth. It is not too far from you that you should have to cross the sea and the ocean and bring it back. It is in you. It is in your heart, and it says very specifically, it is in your mouth. And you can do it. So that basically what we're saying is this spiritual thing that we all look for, this spear of light or truth that we all kind of seek, is not coming up from the ground and from another mortal. It has to be found within ourselves first. And so we do everything we can to find it. And that means we put ourselves on the line. We fast sometimes. We suffer when we have to. We suffer for the people we love. We deprive ourselves. And when we deprive ourselves, then suddenly it opens up a channel for us to care about. I got my warning. I got it. First of all, I just want to say that as a rabbi, I think that was a very bad pour to put me before you eat. But I'm gonna stick with you because I talk rough. So the last thing I was going to say is Jews do this all the time, where we create this little universe based on ritual, and we hope that this little universe based on ritual will illuminate all the points that we care about the most. We do it on Shabbat, when we're supposed to mimic when the Messianic time will come. And we do it in fasting, when we're supposed to remember really what it means to sacrifice. And we say over and over again, may shalom, may peace in the high heavens reign in us and to the rest of the earth. And so working extremely hard to find that place of humility brings us closer to our community, closer to our God, and I think closer to a manner of living that is peaceable and worthy of this tremendous gift we've been given. Thanks.
Thank you very much for educational presentation. I have lots of questions for you. Our next speaker is Deacon Robert Hesse. I pronounced that correct?
Close enough.
Okay, good. Oh, that's good.
So that was me. Look, I got off.
Yes,
You had a
pretty good. Deacon Robert Hesse is an ordained Catholic deacon of Galveston, Houston Archdiocese. He holds a Bachelor of Theology from University of St. Thomas and a BS in Chemistry and a PhD in Physical Chemistry from St. Louis University. Deacon Hesse is an instructor at Rice University and adjunct professor at University of St. Thomas. He is a co-founder and president of Contemplative Network, CN, dedicated to interdenominational Christian contemplative prayer, and also the co-founder of the Faith Science Initiative at the University of St. Thomas. Deacon Hesse serves as the vice chairman and faculty of the Institute for Spirituality and Health. We have some leaders from that institute here. His interests include the convergence of science and religion, which includes physics, metaphysics, chemistry, life, biology, consciousness, wow, psychology, mysticism. You've got to explain that one.
Yeah.
He has special interest in healing suffering from mental illness. He has given numerous presentations locally, nationally, and internationally. He is the president, founder of the Energy and Project Management Consulting Company, HEI, and has traveled to 60 countries, often establishing international consortia. Please welcome Deacon Robert Hesse.
Thank you very much. I want to say that I'm very humbled and honored to be here. And I will try to keep this to 7 minutes. Fasting predates the Abrahamic religions, chronologically Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. that are represented here today. Of those, the largest is Christianity with 2.1 billion, but it's not monolithic. It has about 40,000 denominations, so I can't possibly represent them all. But I can speak for Catholicism, which makes up about 1.5 billion, the majority, which happens to be about the same number as Muslims. So in this 7-minute presentation, I would call it the Chopin Minute Waltz. You better get ready. I wish to touch on the requirements of fasting and abstinence and how they related to prayerful worship. In 1966, Pope Paul VI changed the strictly regulated Catholic fasting and abstaining requirements to make them appropriate to the local economic situations and to change the motivation from the negative avoiding sin to the positive of loving neighbor. After all, the poorest countries are already starving, so we need to make these more local. Hence, they encourage Catholics to approach fasting not as an obligation, but as a free will choice, voluntarily fasting and abstaining to a greater extent than what is just minimum required. The important point here is that without free will, there is no love. This resulted in the following minimum requirements in the United States. Fasting is the reduction of one's intake of food to 1 full meal and 2 small meals, both of which together should not equal the large meal. Eating solid food between meals is not permitted. Fasting is required on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, which bracket Lent, the 40 days of Lent. Also, fasting is from everything except water for 1 hour before receiving the Eucharist, which is an important thing in Christianity. Fasting is required between the ages of 18 and 59, and abstinence is avoidance of meat every Friday in Lent for ages 14 and older. Spiritually, Jesus' writings link prayer, a form of worship, and fasting. In Matthew, Jesus says, "When you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites. They neglect their appearance so that they may appear to others to be fasting. When you pray, go to your inner room, close the door, and pray to your Father in secret. Do not babble like the pagans who think that they will be heard because of their many words." Jesus personally demonstrated this, as Matthew says, Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. Fasting prepares us for prayer, especially concentrated inner room contemplative prayer, which exists in each of the Abrahamic faiths, namely Kabbalah, Sufism, and mysticism. This form enables sharing in the consciousness of God's love, thus lessening sinful behavior. So let's discuss how the physiological, psychological, and sociological aspects of fasting contribute to the spirituality of prayerful worship. Physiologically, our metabolism requires a rush of blood to the stomach to digest food with more required for consuming meat. This robs the brain of nutrients and oxygen needed for prayerful concentration. Food makes praying more difficult. And in our U.S. land of plenty, cutting back on food makes us physically healthier. A scientific study on one Christian's 40-day fast at about 100 calories per day shows that it can be done safely. Psychologically, when our senses enjoy something, it distracts us from prayer. For example, I love chocolate. Notice our language uses the word love, which is significant. While enjoying chocolate, if I get interrupted by the doorbell, the distraction makes me lose those moments of enjoyment, even though I'm still chewing. If we doubt this, think about remembering your joyful moments after being interrupted, and you will realize that those moments are lost forever. The same thing happens in reverse while praying and then being interrupted by chocolate. You're going to see this obsession with chocolate here. Also, if we consume our chocolate every day, then it loses some of its joy. God wants us to experience joy, but knows that at the end of a fast from chocolate, it becomes 1,000 times more enjoyable. Hence why fasts are necessarily followed by feasts. Sociologically, we know people are starving in the world. By fasting, we share in their suffering. That is, we are in compassionate communion. The word compassionate means with suffering. And I think I'm starting to suffer right now. The word compassionate means suffering, and the word communion means with union. We are required to not just fast by giving something up, but to share what we have given up, as quoted in Isaiah. Is this not rather the fast that I choose? Is it not sharing your bread with the hungry, bringing the afflicted and the homeless into your house, clothing the naked when you see them? Notice the Christian roots in Judaism. In this way, we become companions with others. The word companions means with bread. These words point to why the Eucharist is so important to Catholics and why we share meals with others, as we will at the end of this discussion, to show our love for each other. By the way, Muhammad, Imam, is there chocolate afterwards? Oh, chocolate. It keeps getting in the way of our prayer. Thank you.
I hope I don't look gloomy. Thank you. Our final and last speaker is Dr. Bilal Rana. He's a layperson. He currently serves as the national president of the youth organization in the USA. Previously, he served as national director of interfaith relations for the Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Organization from 2006 to 2010. He completed his degree with a minor in religious studies from the University of Houston. As a, what was your major?
Biology.
Biology? Okay, sorry. He completed his, right, so I said that. Okay, so as a layperson, he has appeared on several interfaith shows on local cable representing Islam, and occasionally lectures at the Houston Police Academy in cultural training for future cadets. He also speaks at the community's annual convention and has contributed to various journals, including the Muslim Sunrise, which was mentioned before by Dr. which has been in publication for 90 years, and authored a book chapter on the life of the early missionary movement of Islam in America. He also volunteers for Humanity First, which is a sister disaster relief organization, also mentioned earlier on. Last year, he in fact led the youth volunteer recruitment for Hurricane Sandy, and recently the tornado disaster in Moore, Oklahoma. Professionally, Dr. Rana is an anesthesiologist, so but I guarantee you will not be falling asleep. and resides in Houston with his wife and 4 lovely children. Dr. Rana.
I felt like I was looking at a sort of glimpse of my life. Thank you for that. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful. Deep down, all of man, all of us here, are prompted by a desire to be better than who we are, to be spiritually excellent, to be noble, to be pure, to be godly. And it's that prompting that Islam understands and tries to hone. And the great irony or tragedy of mankind is that we rule the world. We are basically, I mean, if you're on an airplane and you look out the window and you look down, you see man's left his mark. If you look at a satellite photo of our planet at night, you see where man has left his mark. Man rules the world. But isn't it ironic that oftentimes man cannot even rule his own heart? Man is not in control of himself. We can conquest countries and reached great heights, the tallest mountains. We've even put our flag on the moon. But have we conquered our heart? And that's the question. So Islam, as any good religion, recognizes that. And there are spiritual systems that Islam has in place to promote that. Those are what we call the 5 pillars of Islam, in which the faith rests on. And one of those pillars is fasting, is Ramadan. So it's here to condition us, to improve our spiritual condition, our moral condition, our social condition as a community. That's the purpose of Ramadan. It's a very special time around the world for Muslims right now. It is like a spiritual spring, if you will, a season, a spring spiritually for the Muslim Ummah, the Muslim community around the world. And it's a very delightful time, it's a very festive time, but underneath that is the real purpose, the introspection, the reflection of ourselves, to try and to be truly good. That is the objective. So, this subject in 7 minutes, I'll try and do my best, but in addition to the philosophical reasons to why we fast, I'm often addressed with a lot of questions. And I find myself constantly debunking myths about Islam or some commonly asked questions. So fact check. How do Muslims fast? How is it different from other faiths? Well, we wake up in the morning early before sunrise and partake of a meal. During the daytime, we don't drink, we don't eat, we don't have conjugal relations, and then we open this fast at night, and those things then become lawful. So what's the objective, right? Is the objective to refrain from eating, from drinking? So the real objective is to search for a higher purpose in life, to live a life that doesn't require or has a taste for, it's not sustained by these nourishing things like water and bread, but is nourished spiritually with the relationship with God. So that is the real essence of Ramadan. What does Ramadan mean? Ramadan basically means heat. It means that which burns. So this is, by no accident. So the word, in the word is a suggestion of the spiritual experience that the Muslim has. When you try and reform something, when a blacksmith tries to purge impurities out of a metal, what does he do? He heats it up. He reforms that metal when there's intense heat, when it's white hot. That's what Ramadan is. It also suggests the relationship, the warmth between man and his maker. It's very interesting that this tradition of fasting, as was mentioned in the verses that were recited, does not come from Islam. It actually is a tradition which we're carrying, that we can credit you for. And in fact, the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, peace be upon him, fasted on Yom Kippur himself. And in fact, Muslims even today fast on what we believe is the historical Yom Kippur, which is the 10th of Muharram. There was a variance in opinion among the Jewish scholars and Muslim scholars for centuries. And so Muhammad fasted on Yom Kippur. And I find that fascinating. So not only did Moses fast 40 days, Jesus fasted 40 days, David also fasted in the Judeo-Christian. In 2 Samuel mentions that David also fasted. Muslims also fast. And not just casually, we also fast for a full month, much like the prophets. So the experience that they had in going in real deep, not just a casual fast where you give up something. That's one of the interesting differences between Muslims and non-Muslims, is that we go pretty much to a heightened experience with our fast. And we have that experience that prophets strive to experience. That spiritual journey that prophets provide us an example for, we are then doing that. The reason why we fast, God tells us Allah says in Islam that whoever fasts for my sake. So the objective is that you get nearer to God. when I came here, I prayed. Before I prayed, we do an ablution, we wash ourselves, and we rinse our mouth. And nobody's going to know if I swallow that water. My throat's dry, my lips are parched. I can drink that water, nobody's going to know. But why don't I do it? It's because a voice inside me, rises out and says, God is watching. God is near. Be aware of this God who's always near when you're fasting and when you're not fasting. So thank you very much.
Okay, well, this is, we're now going to open up question and answers or questions from the studio, the audience. So, I'm not sure, do we have a mic set up somewhere? Okay, we have a mic there. Okay, so if anyone's got any questions, you can speak into the mic. There's an usher there who give you a mic and you can ask a question. Or I know we have some members of the Hindu Vedanta Society. Perhaps they want to say something. Tell us something about your traditions as well. So I see, and if there's any other groups that have not been that also observe fast, please, so mic.
Yes, sir. My name is Vijay Palur, and fasting in Dharmic tradition. Dharmic is basically Hinduism, Buddhism, and Sikhism. They're pretty prominent in Jain religion. They do very, very strict fasting. For example, they drink only water for 40 days. I don't know how they're doing. But I've been fasting for the last few years. It's very fascinating what I achieved by fasting. I do once a week on every Monday. But the fasting is, I do not like a specialty, but want to get healthier. So I want a lot of things. So basically, I drink juice and eat fruits and then again. And the fasting is for us, it's a bit different from other religions. Our fasting is you cannot eat, like in Jain Dharma, you cannot eat after sunrise, and no, you cannot eat after sunset and before sunrise. It's very different from what I'm hearing from other people. And for me also, for example, like a lot of people would like to eat after 8 o'clock or something, but normally I prefer not to eat.
Thank you. Great.
If I could add to that.
Yeah.
Commonly you mentioned you do it for your health, or one of the reasons why you do it is for your health, and being a physician, I feel compelled to pull the mic. And I get asked this question a lot, isn't it unhealthy? And so what are the demerits then of fasting? So dehydration and headaches are two of the common symptoms of fasting. Now, here's the thing. When you open a fast, you drink. So there's basically nothing that, there's nothing symptomatic that can't be reversed with the Islamic tradition of fasting. And quite simply, if you're not well, you don't fast. And there's an expiation for that. So you feed a poor man. And Islam is quite liberal in its understanding of people who are deconditioned. So as simple as having a cold, breastfeeding or expecting, being elderly. None of these things are, there's no expectation for fast. So you merely feed a poor man. So I think that's really, and what are if those are the demerits, what are the health benefits? So decreased high blood pressure, better control of diabetes. If you're diabetic, you should be fasting, but there are people who are diet control diabetics, they don't take pills. So if you're taking any pills, so you shouldn't be fasting. If there's any doubt, you should consult with your physician. Really popular these days is this detox type of lifestyle. And so I think like contemporary diet gurus are getting hip to this. In fact, one of them, I forget his name, but he started this intermittent fasting diet, and he was being interviewed on television about why do you do, what made this dawn on you? And he said, not a religious interview. And he said, well, I was reading, and the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, would fast every Monday and Thursday. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. Let me research that. So he researched it and found that, just a whole number of things, an improved immunity, less inflammation for people who have arthritis, so on and so forth. So there are a lot of, not to mention decreased weight, more fat burning the longer the fast. So just really interesting. I thought I'd share.
Judaism too. If you're pregnant, if you're in any way physically compromised, you're not supposed to. There's Talmudic stuff on that. You're not supposed to. Of course, I was busted once by a kid when I was pregnant that no one knew, who walked in and started eating before services. But I didn't have to.
There are exceptions in Christianity too, very similar.
What happens if you accidentally break your fast?
So the answer is in your question. When you say accident, everything in Islam goes back to your intention. So if you accidentally swallow that water, it's okay. And just one more thing, children are not expected to fast as well. That's also important. The Holy Prophet of Islam said, "Inna dina yusr," which means verily faith is meant to be easy for you. So when you're of a mature age, which can be between 15 or 18 or whenever you stop growing like that, then it's expected to start fasting.
Any other questions?
Not a question, but a little bit of a statement. We wanted to
Sure.
a little bit more about the Vedanta Society and who we follow. Vedanta, of course, is part of major Hindu religion itself. All I can say is, in Hinduism, at the drop of a hat, people fast. They fast for 7 days, 9 days, like my friend here, she would fast in October. For over 9 days or so. And people fast part of the day sometimes, and they fast by giving up certain items, like they don't eat rice or any starches. So there's several ways of fasting. But in our own prophet, whom we call Sri Ramakrishna, whom we follow, said once when some young women came to see him, they were fasting because we tend to fast before we visit a holy person. They fasted and came, and Sri Ramakrishna said to them, "It hurts me to see women fast because you're all dead." He saw the Divine Mother in all women. And he said, "Please go inside and be fed something and then come back and we can talk." And we take that also as part of our thing. We do fast, of course, before worships and all that, but we don't do such. We're not advised to do very rigorous fasting by mouth. But the other thing is, main important thing in the Hindu system is, fasting is not just physically eating something through your mouth. Fasting is refraining from hearing, taking anything. Ahara means taking anything in by the ear, by the eyes, or mouth is not the most important thing. So we try not to watch bad things on the TV maybe. If you're fasting for a few days on special occasions, we try to read holy books, we try to hear holy things, and speak holy things. That is considered a better form of fasting for us.
And of course you would all agree with that.
Sure. I mean, what I was going to say is there's a lot of Talmudic texts that talk also similarly to Islam that intention is really the whole thing. So if you accidentally eat, it's your intention that counts, which is also why children can't. It's also why if someone doesn't know the law, they can't be. So heightened spirituality comes with greater knowledge, And that also brings greater obligation. So it's commensurate with the gifts that we have, or whatever we already possess. So in this one, I think it's a particularly interesting subject for an interfaith discussion, because a lot of times in interfaith discussions, we focus on what's out there, you know, the things that are different, right? When we forget that in all of our faiths, it starts with the individual monitoring him or herself, directing his or her actions appropriately, all the things that you just spoke about, right? So when you deprive yourself of this thing, this food, suddenly you become focused on those things. So I think that's why it has been a part of every religious tradition I know, including, doesn't the Buddha have this long fast and he's fasting too much, and that's when he has his dream, where his enlightenment comes from, at the end of that day.
Thank you for making that comment, because it's true, it's not just from food. In the Christian monastic tradition, monasteries and convents, they practice celibacy. And so their focus is completely in prayer and worship, even if it's labor during the day. So the fasting applies in a much broader range. And so I'm glad you mentioned that.
Thank you. Same here. And I'll add that in addition to refraining from all sorts of noise on the individual level in order to find individual peace, the tradition of fasting in Islam also brings about societal peace. And at this mosque, during the evenings, especially on the weekends, everyone congregates here. Throughout the day, the community will come 5 times a day, and will socialize shoulder to shoulder. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, whether you're dark complected or light complected, educated or uneducated. Go to the poor mall or the rich mall. It doesn't matter whether you're Longhorn or Aggie. You'll come here and everybody is treated equally. And that idea is important for social peace. And this is interesting because I also get asked, why do we follow the lunar calendar? And I've always wondered, but if you think about it, this is also another form of equality. And like right now, down under in the southern hemisphere, the days here are very long, very hot, right? Summer, very long days. In Australia, short days, wintertime. So where's the equality, you could say? Well, guess what happens in the lunar calendar? Every year, 10 days shorter. So it always moves. So when I was in high school and in college, it was about 15 years ago, I had the short fasts during the non-hot months. So there's equality even in that system. I found it very interesting.
Okay, we have one here, and then one here, and then you'll be second, okay? So, go ahead.
Right of the second question I was going to ask you, how do people fast when they're up in the Arctic and the days are like forever? And the second question was, when you said if you're taking medication you shouldn't fast, does that mean emergency, short term, or if somebody's on Lipitor, or those sorts of drugs, would they be dispensed from a fast?
Thank you. So with medications, you can always consult your physician. Typically, if you can take your medication during the morning or during the evening, if it's a one-time pill, then it's okay. So there's that. But if you're in doubt, always talk to your doctor. We also, in places like parts of Alaska, or let's say Norway, where I think the days can extend even months. And so what do you do, right? So we follow a very scientific method in Islam, 12 and 12. So you'll, or at least in our community, we will fast for 12 hours and then not fast for 12 hours. So more or less that's what happens. Interesting question.
The Jewish answer would be that Jews shouldn't live in places like that. But actually the only point I wanted to make about that is that in all things with Jewish law, you go to a rabbinic expert on it, so it depends on how orthodox you are. And then I think very similar to other traditions, we have commentary or legal renderings, and those are from people who are experts in the area. And the thing about Judaism is you got like 2 Jews, 10 opinions, which is always true. But the point is that if you care enough to be asking that question, this is important, if you care enough to be asking that question, then you're already sort of on your way to being engaged with what the meaning of fasting is. So there's no one answer. I mean, I think of a rabbi who would say lipitor because overall, you know, in Judaism you can break any law if you're saving a life, and that can be interpreted in many ways. So.
I think there was.
Yeah, my name is John Mungayatu, and I'm with the Family Foundation for World Peace. It's founded by Reverend Samia Moon. And I just like to say that I like to thank Imam Muhammad Safarullah for sharing all this in common with all religious faith. So we also in Family Federation for World Peace, we also fasting. When I joined our movement, I fasting 7 days without food. But when I feel I'm thirsty, then I allow to drink a little bit, but no food at all for 7 days. But then the second day I was fasting also 8 days. But also in our movement also we fast 21 days. And our founding Reverend Sanyan, he fast 40 days without food, only water. Yeah, and the fasting itself that we share now with interfaith, I'm always happy to share with all common denominations and all religious here. So I really thank Imam Muhammad Safarullah for this meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, we're going to have one more question. I think we're approaching 8 o'clock and we have a 8:15 hard stop. So, yes.
I'm John Graham at the Institute for Spirituality and Health. And what I wanted to speak to was the Protestant part of Christianity, because we're quite different, of course, for the most part, on everything about Catholicism. But I will say this, what I've heard up here at the front from you three are a communal type of fasting where the community fasts. In most Protestantism, that doesn't happen, but what does happen is individuals will go into a fast whenever there is an important decision to make. They're trying to seek for God's will, so they will set apart a time. And we often spoke in the Protestant churches, we often speak of being called to a fast, that an individual is called to a fast time. And he or she will get off by themselves and spend a particular time seeking God's will. Quite often they may even go on a silent retreat. The Jesuit Spirituality Center is open to even Protestants. I've been there 2 or 3 times. And greatly enriched by that. But I want to tell you one thing we did in the Protestant movement that shut down fasting for a while. There was a period of time in which everybody was called to fast on Fridays for our nation. This was because of 2 Chronicles 2:14 that said, if my people are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray, I will heal their land. Well, we went into fasting every Friday. I mean, it was dramatic. I mean, serious stuff for our nation because we were worried about it. Until Tricky Dick Nixon and Watergate happened. And we said, oh my gosh, we better quit fasting because we better quit. No telling what it'll show up in our nation. We didn't want to know about this. And all of a sudden we saw the raw side of our nation. I think there must be a lot of people fasting for our nation right now.
On that note, I think
I'd like to make one comment. John Graham is an ordained Episcopal priest, an MD, and a doctorate in ministry. So he knows of when he speaks.
Absolutely. Well, we actually were invited to speak at an event recently at the institution. So, well, thank you very much. I want to thank our speakers, and I want to thank you lot as well. We, of course, will continue this when we break for the iftar dinner. But before that, I'm going to have our Imam say a few remarks, closing remarks, and also lead in silent prayer. Imam Muhammad Zafrullah is the Imam of this mosque, but he's also the missionary serving various mosques in the southwest region.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I was listening the speech of all the religions. If anyone had left like a Buddha or a Sikh, I think so everyone other has included. And I was thinking about Reverend Moon, they have already talked, and even Vedanta Society also the talk. If anyone has left, I will also give them the time that if they want to introduce themselves about their own fasting, they are most welcome. If any member from both community or from the Sikh. Okay. And two things I want to say about the fasting month in the Quranic Kareem that our holy book is saying. Number one is that if you are keeping fast, you are hope and pray that you become a righteous and godly person. Number one. Number two is la'allakum tashkurun, that if you are fasting, you should become the grateful to God Almighty Allah, because God has done so much favor upon you, and you see those people in Africa and Asia, they are suffering from that way. That will increase you more to become thankful to God Almighty. And Prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam, will say that not just you become hungry and thirsty, no. If you are not going to change yourself, you are not going to abuse, you are not going to tell lies, then Allah will not care you. You have to live that life of a pious. And the other thing is the Quranic Kareem was revealed in this month. And the last 10 days of the Ramadan, you have seen this small chamber, there are 3 people, they are sitting there, they have left world and they are just here and remembering Allah and praying Allah. That's all. The most important thing is for fasting is connection with God. That's all. Other thing is, these are just discipline, just you feel for other people also that if they are hungry, how you feel, you have to do some things. That is all. Just a few things I wanted to share with you. There are many things, and Quran also say in these days, God become more closer to you in these days. Because when you do all things for sake of Allah, then Allah will also come down and ask you, call me, I will accept your prayer. This is the reason Muslims, they celebrate this month. We get together, we have a iftar dinner, we have the prayers, all these things. We hope and pray that at least this is the exercise, this is 1 month exercise, and we should try our best to become more and more closer to God. And that is the reason we try to make these kind of interfaith meetings to educate the people from different kind of the faith. So now I will say my concluding word. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful, respected guests and speakers, peace be on you. Thank you for attending tonight's interfaith iftar dinner and sharing our blessed tradition with us. As you know, Ramadan is a very special time for Muslims. We pay special attention to building a closer relationship with God during this month, but it is also a month when we spend the most time with family and friends. Every evening we break our fast together in the mosque eat dinner together, and pray together. So I am honored that tonight we will be doing so with our extended family, all of you who are present here today. We all share many faith traditions, but in the end we all love and worship the same Almighty God who created all of us and instructed us to love each other for His sake. Like a family, we may have our differences, but we also have many similarities, as we learned today. Ahmadiyya Muslim community has always considered interfaith dialogue extremely important, and I assure you that here in Houston, we are committed to working together with all other religious groups to increase understanding and tolerance. I would like to take a moment to recognize some special friends who are present here today. Miss Emily Dawn Whitehurst and her family and staff from the Rothko Chapel, and Reverend Bruce Frog and staff from the Cypress Creek Christian Church, and Mr. Scott Nelson from the Institute of Spirituality and the Health. And I also recognize Mr. Bob, Reverend Auxiliary Bob from the Reverend Moon Church. And I also recognize the professor from the Miller, and Professor Miller, and there are also from the Ismaili group, that is the one representative, Talib Saab, he also came. And there are also our Indian Muslim organization, Latafat Bhai Saab also today, they came. So there are also many, I cannot one by one the name, but generally I am very thankful. And also Vijay from a Hindu organization, he is the in charge. He talked about already about the fasting, about the Hindu community. So I hope you will join us again soon. You have been provided a list of upcoming events. Have you received that upcoming events? Okay. We have an interfaith dinner on Saturday. This Saturday is not far. Maybe you will go and on Saturday you can come back also. And that will have a interfaith also dinner, which you are all welcome to attend, and we will hold our Eid al-Fitr celebration on August 9 to mark the end of the Ramadan. That is going to be the next Friday. Not this Friday, next Friday, 9th August. So I am also inviting all of you, those who have time, if they can spare time, they can also attend with us and share our happiness. We will also be holding an interfaith service on September 11 this year, for which invitations will be sent out soon. You will see in these days there will be so many emails will be coming from me for invitations. Please be at that one and try to attend our function. August to October we will be working on the 3rd annual Muslims for Life Blood Drive campaign, which is a national campaign to honor the victim of 9/11 by holding blood drives in our communities. It is not only in the Houston, but all over the country we are going to hold these blood drives. I invite you to join hands with us and organize a blood drive at your office, church or synagogue this year. Contact information has been provided. Finally, I ask you to join with me in silent prayer. Please pray for the poor and hungry this Ramadan, those who fast endlessly because they have no choice. Please pray for peace in the world and for tolerance and understanding between all the religions. Thank you very much. God bless you. It is a great honor for us that you spared your time, you came, and you are going to join with us in the after dinner. So now, please join with me in silent prayer. Allahumma Ameen. Thank you very much. If you have any question or anything with relaxation mood, you can do whatever